his divine presence and the greatest composer of all times. Most people would agree on that. I think that if you really dislike Bach, you keep quiet about it.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is playing Bach on a modern piano. Do you want to share your thoughts about this?
That's the elephant, yes. Well, it's certainly an elephant, but it's a very useful elephant because it can do a lot of things. If you ask what's the right instrument for Bach, it's impossible to answer that question. Look at the 48, the Well-Tempered Clavier. We cannot say what instrument it was written for. Clavier is a Sammelwort, a collective word. It means all the keyboard instruments that were available for Bach at the time. So that is first and foremost the clavichord, beautiful little instrument for in a room, but already in this room, maybe in the first row you would be able to hear it, but already the second row you will have problems. And yet this was Bach's favorite instrument. And I have one of these in my home in Florence, and I love playing it, but really only for myself and maybe for one listener. But it's an essential instrument, not very practical. Then there is the harpsichord, which is a more public instrument and certainly wonderful for certain pieces. The Goldberg Variations is a good example, or the Italian concerto, really specifically written for a harpsichord with two manuals. And then there is Bach's most important instrument, which is the organ. So it's all, plus they used to have pedal harpsichords and all kinds of hybrid animals. So it's all a collection of that, but you cannot really now say which specific prelude and fugue was intended for which instrument. And yet I think this elephant is the only one that can somehow, if you treat it well, do justice to all of these works. You cannot play all the preludes and fugues on the clavichord. Certainly not on the harpsichord. I mean, people do, but I suffer from that because you have all these appoggiaturas. If you play an appoggiatura, for example, you see, the second note has to be any musical person. I'm sure you are all musical in this room. If I ask you to sing an appoggiatura, then you will sing pam taram tam tiram sospiri sospiri. The second syllable is softer than the first. If it's not, then it's unmusical. And the harpsichord is not able to play that. I mean, it's just not possible. You have to make huge agogic changes. And I think that distorts the music. I mean, it becomes something in Bulgarian rhythm. Because if I play... And that's what the harpsichordists tend to do, because there is otherwise no possibility to make that second note softer. So therefore, I find that all these kind of very vocal pieces are not suited to the harpsichord. And then you have the organ, you have the end of the A minor fugue, which starts, It's a monstrous fugue, and it's... hear that pedal note, and you cannot play the end of this fugue with two hands. It's just not possible. So that proves this is an organ fugue. but it's the only one which is obviously an organ fugue. And so this is the only example in all of Bach where I must touch the sustaining pedal, which I hate to do. Not because of a dogma. We should talk about this because it's one of my idei fixes, and I have been seriously attacked on this by a very great fellow pianist. I will not mention the name. Who said, how dare you not use pedal in Bach? And I say, why should I use pedal in Bach? Because all the great pianists of the past have used pedal in Bach. Is that an argument? I don't think so. Certainly, in all those instruments that Bach had at his disposal, the sustaining pedal did not exist. It's a much later invention. And it can do terrible damage, destroying the voice leading, destroying the clarity of the counterpoint. I mean, the clarity is essential in this music. You cannot play like if you are like talking with your mouth full. You have to speak clearly, articulate.
Bach hardly ever gives us tempo markings. Also phrase markings, dynamics. We're often very lost. So how do you determine what the character of a piece is, what the tempo should be, and so on?
Well, that is very personal, but again, it comes from experience. How many other works of Bach you know, and what you associate it with. There are also some real indications. The preludes are easier to characterize, especially in the first book. In the second book, the preludes 20 years later become much more complex and much more polyphonic. So it's harder to come to terms with those. But also there is an idea of the different keys and the symbolism of those keys, which a lot of musicians of Bach's time, like Kirnberger and Mattheson, try to characterize. It's very entertaining because they never agree on anything. I mean, for one theoretician, a certain E major is lyrical and pastoral, and for the other one it's highly dramatic. But it's still pretty obvious. You take a piece like this, you know. So this is the pastoral to me. There is no question. If you know the Christmas oratorio, or you have those movements when you have the sheep grazing. And occasionally you have a tempo marking by Bach, very seldom in the 48. For example, one of the greatest of the set, the last of Book 1, the B minor. And here, prelude, he marks andante alla breve. And andante is not a slow movement. That's also a misconception of many musicians. Andante comes from the Italian verb andare, so in walking motion, yes? So when you have a movement and it's alla breve, so you are counting 2 in a bar and not 4 in a bar. So trio sonata, you have 2 oboes and bassoon and playing in this. And then you have a fugue, which is largo, and this is very slow indeed. So it's so chromatic, you have all the 12 tones in the first two statements. It's unbelievably modern music. And again, that's another good example of the appoggiaturas and the sospiri. Why I don't think this could be played on the harpsichord, because I must have those second notes softer. Some people might disagree, I don't mind. But this is really not harpsichord music. And here you have a very slow tempo marking by Bach. But it's, again, what is a tempo marking? I mean, when you see an adagio by Bach, it's not an adagio by Bruckner. And that's why it's important to have certain experience with those instruments of Bach's time, what they were capable of. And the same is true for Beethoven, for Schubert, and for later music. There are these movements in the 48 which are really deeply religious. There's just no question to me that something like this usually the piece is in minor key. Music is subjective, but it's not that subjective. And Bach is not an extroverted composer. For him, it was not so important to listen to this or that it should be played. It's just there, sheer perfection. Also, this is a very, very human, very down-to-earth message. You know, that's why I find Bach so wonderful, that he's one of us, the best of us, but one of us.